My name is Sylvester Ebhodaghe, publisher, editor-in-chief, National Daily Newspaper, now fully online, nationaldailynG.com. We started out as a media organization in 2006. I remember the first edition of the National Daily hitting the newsstands about October, so we're just around the corner of the anniversary month actually. October 24th was the first edition that hit the newsstand. So since then we have been playing our role, our part in ensuring that our audience, both in Nigeria and beyond, are well informed, that we serve them the intelligence that's required for them to make informed decisions. As much as possible, we try to influence opinions, influence policies. This we have done through the years, and it's about our 18th year. It's been good.
You to transition from being a journalist to becoming a publisher of your own newspaper, National Daily?
I'm still a journalist. I was, after my university, my first degree, I was posted to Lagos for my youth service. While in the orientation camp, I received my posting letter and I was posted to the Guardian. I studied political science and public administration. So I found myself at the Guardian. An interesting story, because when I came in, I remember my first point of call was Mr. Abangbe. Abangbe was the HR, was the admin manager at the time. And he asked me to go to the newsroom where I met one Mrs. Lawrence. Mrs. Lawrence was at the time, I think, the features editor of the Guardian. And she was with her friend, who was Mr. Paul's wife. I think Okonla or something. Paul Okonla's wife was a very good friend. So they were together in the office, and she was informed that there was a couple who had been referred to her by the admin manager. And she came out, collected the copy of the letter, looked at it and asked me a couple of weird questions. Something like, have you written an article before? I said no. Have you worked in a media house before? I said no. Do you have any background in journalism? I said no. And then she said something that I'll never forget. She said, of what use will you be to me? She said, I don't have any use for you. And where are you from? I mentioned my state of origin. Now, unknown to me, her husband was from the state, from the same state, celebrated journalist, Mr. Lawrence. So she said, you know what, you will not be of any use to me here. And we don't think we need you here. So I was practically begging, because the alternative for me would be, because I've been informed in me that if the newsroom had no use for me, then they will have to give me a rejection letter. Then I'll have to go back to the NYC, which means I might have to be sent to a primary school or a public school to go and teach or something like that. But that her friend was like, I was just saying to her, I can do anything. I can learn. I'm a fast learner. If you just give me the opportunity, I can adjust, I can learn. And, she was like, no, there's no time. You just have 10 or 11 months here. So nobody has the time to be teaching you. We are transitioning. And that was the time actually that the Guardian was going through a phase. And she said, see, nobody will have the time to be teaching anybody anything. We need people who already know what we want them to do. And then that her friend whispered to her and said, since he says he can learn and he can adjust, why not um, give him the opportunity? And then she looked and said, okay, um, Mr. Abugu was with her on the features desk, Mr. Felix Abugu. I remember very well. And then one Mr. Nnamdi Yama was the Metro editor at the time. Metro desk was reporting to Mr. Gbenga Omotosho, who also doubled as the Saturday acting editor, I think at the time. And she just said, you know what, that desk, couple of old people there, just go and join them and be sleeping with you. Just don't think you can be sleeping on the desk. I was very happy. So that was the beginning of the journey. So I got in there, and immediately I remember working with the likes of Joey Dika, Mr. Steve Ajulo, who later became Steve Omolande or something like that. So working with the three of them, I think, yes, I also had David Oga. Mr. David Oga, though he was covering maritime, but these were the big brothers I had a period of working with. And I also met some senior core members, like Harry Nduka. Harry Nduka was already like a batch before mine, so he had kind of stabilized. And so they took me through a process in a way. He just saw me as a younger brother, and I found a friend in him, and he gave me a few tips. Go to the library, go and read previous newspapers, see how stories are written, and then try to write anything and bring. I'll look at it for you. And so, as the beginning, and I started writing metro stories, from place to place. Just one day I was told, just go around town, whatever you see, just develop a story and come back. So I remember writing a story about those guys who sold different medications in buses, smaller buses. I was looking for any story, I just wanted to write. I remember when I brought the first story I wrote, she tripped back at me and said, this is an academic writing. I need a new story. And now this is me coming from academic background. Don't know the difference between an academic writing and a new story. But see, all of that, in a way, shaped my passion, as it were. Because when you tell me I can't do a thing, I really want to convince myself that I can do it. I worked with those senior guys who really helped me, those on the sub desk, did a great job, helping to clean up the work, and I always made sure every time a story was published, I went back to demand for the off-cut, the original story I wrote, to compare with the published one. So I would see what journalistic panel beating, the sub-desk did to the stories. And so the next time I'm writing, I want to make sure that I improve on the last one. And so gradually I saw my work, moving up, and to the point where minimal editing was now being done on the sub-desk. And the beautiful thing is, I had lovely people on the sub-desk, Mr. Inka, Mr. Remy Oyelegbin of blessed memory. He was on the sub-desk and he really, really helped me. Mr. Pius Modi. These are people who, Mr. Pius Modi, I think, is with the Delta State Government's office now. These are people who really helped me at the time. They would give me feedback, they would tell me what they felt about what I was doing, and where I needed to give it thumbs up, I would give it thumbs up. And then, because of my knack for, from the house to the office, I'll come with like 3-4 stories. So they said, you know what, I think this guy will be good in crime reporting. So I was seconded to Mr. Ben Akbarata, also of blessed memory, who was the crime correspondent at the time. I was seconded to work with him. And that was how I got into crime reporting fully. So I still continue with, of course, the Metro desk coverage and all of that. But I saw that as an opportunity to deepen whatever I was doing at the time. So that was how I started out. You know, of course, covering crime gave me a lot of opportunities, investigative stories, stories that others wouldn't want to touch. But also coming from the Guardian, where nobody really censored you. I mean, so long it was factual, so long it was the truth, the Guardian would publish. So because again, if you brought a story that wasn't factual, you're going to have your fingers burnt. So that also helped to straighten us in a way. So you always made sure whatever story idea you were working on, whatever information you were bringing, it was the truth, it was the fact. I mean, you had documents to support whatever you were writing. Because everybody knew everybody that knew everybody. So before you try to embarrass them, they would make all the calls and tell you outrightly that the story you're filing is not factual, as it were. So,
how did you move from a journalist to becoming a publisher?
Yeah, so I saw myself moving from crime reporting. I was moved to the business desk, covered a bit of oil and gas, and I moved into information and communications technology. And from there, I also was moved to the production desk, so where I worked as a production sub-editor. And there I came face to face with editorial decision making. Before then, we just wrote stories and went home. But when you become a part of the production team, you see why certain stories made page 1, why they moved to page 3, to page 4, 5, to back page, and however it was done at the time. So I came face to face with the best stories, the making of the best stories, last minute calls, how they were being made, how they were breaking news, how they were dealt with. So I just loved that experience. But again, I also loved my independence. I wanted to be able to publish what I knew was truth, what I knew was correct. But when you also work in an organization, there are certain interests that come to play. So there was an experience that I had. I had to move. The long story that I don't want to go into, and led to my movement from the business desk covering information and computer technology to production. But again, everywhere I found myself, I always wanted to distinguish myself. So I did to the best of my ability. And then I was now asked to go back to where I was. And I said, no, the circumstances that led to my being asked to leave that place had not been addressed. It was a case of not being good enough. So I said, so if I wasn't good enough to work under A, why would I now be so good to cover up for A when he's not going to be on ground? That, I was a bit brainstorming there, and I said, it's either of two things. Either you were wrong in your decision, or you are wrong right now. And if you were wrong in the initial decision, you owe me an apology. And if you are wrong now, you need to correct it and don't send me to where. And they're like, you don't have a choice. I said, no, I do have a choice. They said, you don't? I said, no, I have a choice. I can decide to leave. It was at a time that they're like, do you know what you're saying? I mean, you're working for the flagship. You're going to. I said, yeah, because I felt it was not just the way I was treated. And you should let me know that, oh, we're sorry, we misjudged you, and all of that. And no, you don't have a choice. By tomorrow, you go there, and I said, no, I'm not going to go if this is not addressed. I said, so what choice do you have? I said, I'm resigning. Do you know what you're saying? I just excused myself. I went and typed 4 copies, printed, signed, and left it, and that was it. Of course, the engagement, so you can't take such a rash decision, you need to think it through, it's not easy. And then, of course, there are offers to.
You were not married at that time, right?
No, single. Of course, but I always have responsibilities. You can be single, but you have a lot of responsibilities. Some single people, some single persons have greater responsibilities than some married persons, anyway, depending on your background. So there were offers to go to other leader organizations, but like I said, I enjoyed my independence. I wanted to be able to, even wherever I was, they were like, you have to guide him, don't leave him, you have to check his stories, that is crime background. So even when I came into oil and gas, it was at the time of the downstream and upstream issues, the deregulation of the sector at the time. So the first story I did, they said, no, you don't cover this industry the way you're coming from your crowd, you're going to create a lot of money. You had to do it Ajib at the time when I did that story. So there were offers, but this passion to be independent, to practice journalism the way I would want to treat stories without being, without thinking, okay, what would that person think, what would the other person think, and even if you had a story, however good the story was, it still depended on the clearance that would be given by whoever called the shot at the time. So I decided to step out and do something different. It sounded weird, it sounded stupid, it was more like, come on, our bureau, please come on, this thing is not the way you think, we've been here, we've not, you need to calm down. I said, no, I just spent 5 years there. So what have you learned in 5 years that you can, that you think you can stand by yourself? But looking back, it's the best decision I took.
So, how did you raise the initial funding for National Daily, and how long did it take you from the time you resigned and the time you launched?
It was 2 years.
Wow.
It was 2 years. I had a stop, again when I left The Guardian, with a couple of other people, we started National Standard magazine. Interestingly, because as a Christian church leader, when I'm not in the office, they know I'm in church. I'm not in church, I'm at home. So that was my triangular lifestyle, as it were. I'm not in the office working, I'm in church, serving, or I'm at home. So of course, when you have to do anything, you of course would relate with those you know, those you meet, because people in church. So we did start National Standard magazine. That same year, 2004. A few months after, I made a trip. I just traveled out for a few months. And interestingly, I was going to leave the country. But again, I lost an older sister, and the circumstances were not too clear. I was a younger brother, and traditionally, the older ones don't marry the younger ones. So, and it's the younger male child in the family that is responsible. So, the body was in the morgue. I was there trying to file for resident permit, and I was processing it in a way. Maybe I would have been living another life in time, but I had the responsibility to come back to see to the burial of my late older sister. So of course, coming back, National Standard was already born, and so about a year and a few months working there. But I was a newsroom person. The magazine experience was different for me. So the way I went about my work, those in the team say, hey, this man, that's your newspaper file is still there, So I didn't understand why stories should be written, and I found it difficult making that adjustment in the writing style. But I always wanted a newspaper. I always wanted something I could do daily, the goal. So that gave birth to National Daily newspaper in 2006. And I had the blessing, of course, of my pastor, my man, but there's nothing I do like when we were married. He had a hand in it, blessing whatever I want to do. So I had his blessing. And I remember started in March. At the time, I didn't even have a laptop. So I got across to one of the graphics guys who I worked with at National Standard. And so he came with his laptop and then to just have the first conversation with me. But then I knew I had to get one. And I always worked with the desktop, coming from the analog background. So you wait to get to the office, use the system in the office, and then you go back home. So I got the Toshiba laptop, I remember then, Toshiba laptop. I started the work. I still have my notes here. Sorry.
Now about 18 years, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in establishing and sustaining the newspaper over the years?
There was a question I actually left out about funding. I thought that capital was everything, money was everything, but I think I had the passion, I had the idea, the concept. So I approached a bank that gave me an overdraft. I started out as a weekly. So I got someone to they placed a lien on his account and then advanced some monies to me just to take care of the first rent and the first few things I had to do. Not too much at the time. And then we started out. And after the first month, we started getting adverts, actually. Because our first big stories, we did the first 4 editions. By the 4th edition, I remember very well when the head of corporate communications of a particular bank, showed up in our office. And what we did at the time, I wasn't interested in, I gave copies to vendors, but strategically, I made sure that we put copies, we mailed copies to all the top CEOs in Lagos, particularly, airport lounges, top hotels. We just dropped free copies, and of course, because it was new and the kind of stories we were very investigative. I think the print edition, in print, we were at some point branded at the time the Sahara Reporters in print. Because Sahara Reporters was online, but about the same time, we actually started out about the same time. And so we actually struck a bond. We worked on a couple of stories together. While I was doing it here, he was shooting from the other end. So I remember that corporate affairs communications person coming in and I said, okay, good to see you. Not that we did a story that was critical of his bank, but he said something that the National Daily was being discussed in a particular gathering, and his boss told him that we need to encourage these people. And so they came and just signed up to have their. Apparently, they went to different places and discovered that the paper was everywhere, so they wanted their ads. So we didn't go to them, they came to us and offered to have their ads in every edition over the next 6 months. And so that was like 50% of the cost of production for me at the time. So we got responses also, I still remember very clearly, from the executive vice chairman of the NCC at the time, who also saw what we had done. But we made sure that those offices, as we sent copies into Abuja, Port Harcourt, Benin, we had strategic cities. We made sure that who is who in that city. We got copies. We even got copies into the presidential villa. That got us into trouble in 2007, early 2007, when they stormed my office and they picked up 4 of my staff and insisted I must show up because of some stories we had done. I think at the time we were one of the first to imprint, expose the condition of the presidential candidate of the PDP at the time, Yar'Adua, because we got some exclusive information about his condition at the time. So that didn't go down well with PDP at the time because he was already their candidate. They had zeroed in on him. There was going to be the candidate, and anything of that nature they viewed it seriously because of the particular gathering they had. And I sent people there to go and distribute the copies free, and so they felt that was an enemy action. That you have published it was bad enough, but now you're bringing it to us where we are. So, so I mean that was how we got started. So from the onset, we got some strategic patronage that helped to reduce the financial burden. The burden I had at the time was not as much financial as it was the responsibility to sustain the standard of the quality of content, news stories we were publishing at the time. We were quite razor sharp with our content, and most times we had to even use pseudonyms to publish some of the stories because every time, they were factual, we had proof, we had documents to support our stories at the time. And how was that we got started?
Wow. So you met quite a number of prominent Nigerians along the line as publisher of National Daily, amongst them former President Olusegun Obasanjo and several others. Can you share some memorable experiences from your interactions with such figures?
I consider it an honor, being a journalist, because this is one advantage, it's one of those several advantages and benefits of being a journalist, where you have the opportunity, because journalism itself is a vehicle, just like every profession. It's a vehicle in life that takes you from point A to point B. You get to meet people, and what you make out of those relationship, of course, is entirely to the individual. So there are many, of course, we fought. Interestingly, I'm still in court with some people, some cases that started in 2007. Wow. We are still in court, we won, they went on appeal, so we have some cases they had left out and then they came back, maybe to resurrect the matter. So there are many we met under some very challenging circumstances, but others we also have met, and over time we have become friends. I had the privilege of meeting some who became governors, who have become senators, and gone ahead to be Senate president, former presidents. You discover one thing that endears me to some of these people is their passion, their heart for the country, particularly for the former president Olusegun Obasanjo. He's one man that who is a father, who is is a mentor by every stretch of imagination, and whose passion for a greater Nigeria, a more prosperous Nigeria, you can't question. And that is one thing. Each time I have interacted with him, I I see again and again. You can't have a conversation with you without, expressing that deep, passion to see Nigeria become a great country. And I have enjoyed that relationship also with former President Goodluck Jonathan. You see people who genuinely, really want the country to move forward, who can look back at their time in office and admit, what can be done differently, and have continued to lend their voices, as it were, to advance that agenda. So that has endeared me towards it. But I've enjoyed my relationship with them. Last year, I had the privilege of having former President Olusegun Obasanjo as special guest of honor, and also a recipient of the National Daily Global Icon Leadership Award. And he did remark that day that he is one person that doesn't always accept awards, particularly from media organizations. But this was an exception for him because through the years he has come to recognize the passion I have demonstrated in advancing the need for Nigeria to be run by Nigerians, and for Nigerians who do well to be so recognized and celebrated. Again, coming from a media organization that held politicians' foot to the fire, through the years. When we started at the National Daily Awards, many people couldn't trust us. They were like, you are the one that fights everybody. So when you now say you have identified those who have done well, we must take you very seriously. And of course, we started at the National Daily Awards in 2008. 2007, actually, we had the first edition. We had a couple of editions, and we stopped in 2010. And of course, 2023, 13 years after, we had it. We had to bring it back, and that was the one I just said. Former President Obasanjo was special guest of honor. President Julius Adeluyi, Chairman Julie PLC was chairman, and the immediate past Inspector General of Police, and Khalid Baba, who was our Man of the Year among several other recipients of the National Daily Award. The Lagos Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, was Governor of the Year, and he was present. So we've enjoyed our relationship with these individuals, and we've been greatly inspired by this relationship, and we also believe they too have equally been encouraged by what we do to continue to do for Nigeria what they are doing.
Okay, in the early days of National Daily, given the kind of stories you published, you must have been on the right radar of the security agencies like SSS, and that must have been quite stressful. How did you navigate those challenges, and how did it impact your life, family life?
Wow. I mean, you can't practice the kind of journalism you practiced at the time and not find yourself always being either you are being harassed or even if not by state agencies, by individuals who feel that your stories have impacted them in whatever way, could weaponize those agencies against you, which was what we saw happen at different times. I talked about the case in point when we did a story in 2007. Don't forget, we started out in October 2006, so as early 2007, we were already having these issues. Around January, we did a story, and the DSS picked up some of my reporters, and the condition for releasing them was that I must show off. So, of course, you don't just go to a place like that. As stubborn as we were, as troublesome as we seemed, but there were those who loved what we were doing. So we made a couple of calls because while we're doing what we're doing, people would call and say, "Hey, keep it up. I like what you're doing. That story is true." They may deny it, but it's true. You know, however you got that information is true. So, and of course, the more we publish the stories, the more people volunteered information to us. You know, the anonymous deliveries of documents. You know, sometimes we're concerned that there could be explosives in those packages, but we just say, you know, an envelope full, and then who brought this money dropped it at the gate, and then you open those envelopes and documents that speak to a couple of things happening, either in some government agencies or some state governments, as it were. So, of course, we had to deal with that. First time in the DSS office, then it was SSS on CND Road in Lagos here. And of course, for about 4 hours, I was answering questions. Of course, before I went in, I spoken to a couple of friends. I said, well, if I don't come out, this is where I am. And of course, we were there. I remember the chairman of my editorial board at the time, blessed me, Chris Akiri. Of course, he was a lawyer. He had been on the editorial board of The Guardian, so he's a celebrated public analyst. He didn't rest. He was on top of the matter, making all the calls. And then after about 4 hours plus, I was told you can go. When we need you, we will invite you. So I came out, and later I was to know that the instruction was that you be bundled and brought to Abuja. But somehow, one call after another, the decision was rescinded. And also those who interacted with me, who took my statement at the time, told them that this guy is just passionate about Nigeria. The concern was, who is using you, who gave the information, what is the intention, are you working for the opposition, while I was there, they were running checks on bank accounts to see if you received any money from anywhere, running a check on the phone, my call logs were before me, I'm there, and the guy talking to you saying, on so day you call this number, you call that person, and oh wow, so my call log is there. But at the end of the day, I think they just found out that I was just a passionate citizen who was desirous of a better country, who felt a healthier candidate at the time should be given the opportunity to run the country as far as that story was concerned. Of course, God is the owner of life, He gives health and strength to individuals. So, but I'm sure they discovered there was no malice. We were not out to be malicious against the late president, whom later I had the privilege of meeting while he was president. Saw how desirous he was to move the country forward, only that he didn't have the health to really have the time. So we've had occasions where individuals who were comfortable with stories we had published weaponized security agencies against us, and some even went to the extent of hiring alternative security, who were sent to intimidate. On one occasion when they were knocking around our offices, we got information and escalated it. We raised an alarm, and the Assistant Commissioner of Police in charge of operations at the time, dispatched a team, and on sighting the team, the guys took up. So they just somehow, God has been, protecting us and keeping us on one occasion, one of our reporter, our correspondent in Kaduna, is late now, Dominic Uzu, was also arrested over his story. Imagine, he is in Kaduna as the correspondent. The story affected the state, but the story didn't emanate from him. But he was picked up at the time, and again, always we had a way of talking to one or two persons, and he was let off the hook at the time. So we've had our experiences with them, but one thing has been clear each time. They always ended up knowing that we were not being malicious, that we published the stories because we felt it was the right thing to do. We had our information right, we had proof of what we had published, but then the question is, must you publish? So there's interest. You think you're the only one who has the information. All those other guys you see out there, you want to win CNN award and all of that. So sometimes, by the time we are done with those engagements, they also try to say, this is off record. And I'm just advising you not always have it in school. Under the military, they don't talk to people like this. But because it's a civilian room, that's why we are talking to you like this. You need to calm down. You can't publish. And of course, I was single at the time, and of course, getting married. I mean, those times I could tell you, I wasn't sleeping in my house. Yeah, at times 2 months I don't sleep in my house because I'm told don't. So I will sleep here today and sleep. I had sometimes I would just stay in the office and continue working. Just stay. When I look around and somehow just did it in a way, different places. Then I'm getting married. Of course, the considerations are different. That question will always come: must you publish the story? So that question will always be in your heart: must you publish the story? I remember an in-law who was a journalist, the late Prince Ebhodaghe, was watching. I was doing an analysis on the newspaper review on Channels TV on that occasion. And he called me after and said, I saw you, I heard what you were saying. You move with escort everywhere you go. He stopped short of saying, I'm not too comfortable with your blunt disposition. You just say it as it is. Of course, you begin to have some considerations again and so on. But by and large, it's been an interesting experience for me. Bottom line is we still keep our passion. We engage. Of course, we still engage. Sometimes we have stories. When you reach out to the people who are affected by it, sometimes please allow us to make adjustments, allow us to correct the issues. Of course, sometimes you have to give them the opportunity. And what you want is for change. So, now whether that is the best approach remains to be seen. It's something we have to do at some point.
Okay. As a deacon in the Christ Embassy Church, and many believe that you have a good relationship with the Pastor Sylvester Ebhodaghe. How has your faith influenced your career and the direction of the newspaper?
I'm a Christian, a leader in church, a pastor. Yes, through the years, I've been in Longwood Christ Embassy for more than about 25 years. So you've been in the place for 25 years. You're doing well. Of course, there's the opportunity to grow and have a relationship with those who will be at the top in that organization. Yes, I do enjoy a privileged relationship as a son, as a member, as a leader, as a follower of the man of God. My Christian faith plays a major role in my career. It influences the way I deal with stories, the kind of stories that I want to be involved in, and how we deal with the stories. Always we want to make a difference. Always we want to effect a change. Always we want to provide those who have responsibility to make decisions and take actions with the information they require, information they need. And as a Christian, I believe that I have a duty to contribute to the growth of my society, to contribute to the development of the nation. And I'm carrying that out through, one of the ways is through the practice of the journalism profession. So even when I guide those who have worked with me through the years, I've had the privilege of working with amazing team members, and I must say, these things we have done, we didn't do. I wasn't the one doing it all alone. I worked with amazing guys. Some of blessed memory, Ben Charles Obi Jr. Worked with me very closely, anchored amazing content together. I talked about my relationship with Tomoye Shore, publishers and reporters. I've had amazing, editorial staff, Ahoma Kano, Akimpelu. These are individuals who went ahead to win the CNN Multi-Choice Journalist, the African Journalist Award, in certain categories. But we won it back to back. I think that was the tourism category. We won them back to back. I've worked with amazing guys, and through the years, even when I interact with them, I provide guidance in editorial meetings, the way we look at issues, I see my faith, of course, playing out, influencing some of my choices and decisions, and also in the way we have conducted our activities. The first question you asked was, how did you raise the capital? It was a faith project. National Daily is a faith project. We started out, not really having, you have this 100 million, 200 million, it wasn't anymore. We didn't even have 50 million. We didn't even have 30 million. So when people talk about being owned and backed by certain names, I try to enjoy it, all right, because in some quarters it works for us, so they're like, don't touch it because there's one big person there. So it has really worked, maybe unknown to us. And also it has influenced maybe a reach that we ordinarily would not have had. So my faith has played a key role in standing firm, and not allowing the vision die. We've gone through phases. We had to rest the print edition and transited to fully online multimedia. Because the multimedia element we are fine-tuning right now, which we have all of that common. In about a few months from now, we're launching the ND World TV to provide that multimedia element to run as a web TV. So the National Daily project essentially has been a faith journey, and my faith, both in my being a Christian and in having faith in God and His ability, which is at work in us, have played major roles in our journey so far. When many thought, okay, by now National Daily should be history, we just have a way of, reenacting ourselves. We're just there. And many come to that conclusion that indeed God's hand is upon this project. And we have made a lot of impact. We have influenced a lot of decisions, a lot of policies, both at state government levels and local government levels, where we've held people at different levels and even agencies to task. And we have really influenced our society to the best of our ability. And we are not we're not resting on ours. So we're continuing, we're fired up, we're actually working on the next phase for us, National Daily, and our world will hear from us. We do big things, and it's been an experience, and it's been God all the way. And I'm so grateful to my man of God, Pastor Chris, for being ever so loving and supportive, always praying for us and praying for me. Those times when you feel like everywhere, is turning against you, things are tough, you have a way of drawing strength. When you hear, you can't listen to Pastor Chris and be down. You can't listen to him and not be fired up to want to make a difference in your world. So I'm so grateful to God that I have him as a mentor, I have him as my pastor, as my spiritual father, whose love I enjoy so much.
You are married to the daughter of Omonoba Eredua of Great Benin. How has this royal connection influenced your personal and professional life?
It's a privilege, I would say, to have been considered by my father-in-law, my father, Royal Majesty of Benin. So proud to marry his daughter, Princess Ebhodaghe, my wife. Of course, coming from my background, faith, if you listen to Pastor Chris, you understand what I'm talking about. We are raised to know that we are royalty, children of the King of all kings, God Almighty. So, coming from that top classic way and coming into this relationship, because it was an easy, not a transition, but it was a familiar terrain. And I had the privilege of coming face to face with the Benin, the great Benin royal family, understanding, the blessing, the privilege of being a member of that family, relating with the family. You just want to be at your best always, because you can't afford to, how do I put it now? You don't want to lower any standards, because I was dealing with a man who had been a super upset. Come in contact with him in a conversation. It's always elevated, And he also always loved having a conversation with me, because as a journalist you tend to know something about everything. So always I had opinions, I had information, ideas, and also this was also a man who knew so much. So it was an interesting experience for me. Of course, it also helped me to maintain very high standards in the things I did. I didn't want to engage in any activity that would drag the name of the family to disrepute. So I enjoyed the love, I enjoyed the relationship. I'm like a younger brother to my older in-laws, a sibling to my contemporaries, and a big brother to those that are younger. It's been interesting for me. It has also greatly positioned me, because we can't rule out the fact that you are the son-in-law of the great Oba of the Great Benin Kingdom. And I also enjoy that with His Royal Majesty of our second, the Oba of Benin, who of course is my wife's eldest brother and actually raised her. So he's also my father-in-law. He's also her father. And I enjoyed that amazing relationship as well. It's a relationship that shapes you, a relationship that always puts you on your toes, a relationship that always inspires you to want to be at your best. Because you don't come before His Royal Majesty if you don't have the right information. You must be at your best always, because you don't know what question you will be asked. And sometimes you hey, so when I'm going there, I want to make sure everything is on point, because it's always a learning experience also. You tap from the wisdom. Of course, there are opportunities where you would need that intervention. Of course, it will be there, but I think so far it has been an interesting one for me. I just enjoy being a member of the family. I enjoy the privilege of having my wife as my wife. That's just what it is.
Looking back at your career, what legacy do you hope to leave behind in Nigerian journalism, and what advice would you give to younger journalists aspiring to follow in your footsteps?
I'll start with the last one and move to the first one. My advice to younger journalists whom I encounter on a regular basis, they come here for industrial attachments, youth service, and when they have researches too, they come around. So I tell them it's about adherence to ethical standards, of the practice of journalism. Of course, you ensure that whatever stories you're working on must impact the society meaningfully. If the story is not going to impact the society meaningfully, it just doesn't make sense. And really, it's what I've talked about in my speeches and presentations through the years. It is what I tell young journalists. You take that story idea, you want to work on that story. The fundamental question you ask yourself is to what intent, to what purpose. What would be the impact of this story in the society? How will it impact the society? And of course, you can't lower standards, you can't lower the quality of whatever work you do, because your work will always speak for you. I remember starting as a young journalist. I was just in the newsroom there doing my thing. First as a youth corper. But before then, when you do your youth service, you plan to stay another 2 years before the Guardian will consider you for job offer. But there are a couple of us, 2 or 3 of us, myself, Mr. Museli, Sunday Resakwe, and one other guy, we were so, and they would attest to the fact that I inspired them a great deal, So we were the first that the next month, the offer letter was there. We were done in March, and by April, I remember my other then, Mr. Nika Izizi, he said, keep working, well, I'm on it. You won't lose any month. So we kept working. I remember I stayed 2 days just to relax after the passing of Paris. And then when I now showed up, where have you been? And we thought you were not coming. I said, no, I'm here. I said, yeah, because I gave you my word. Because I had the opportunity, I wish I could say this. When I was getting offers, then on some platform, some guys who were in those media houses wanted me to come in. They had talked about me to their bosses. I remember meeting Mr. Kingsley Sadler, and I told him the dilemma I found myself. Guardian was paying very, very meager salaries at the time. There were 2 other guys who were paying so much. One was paying much and regular. One was paying much but not regular. Then he said to me, and I'll never forget, I hope I see him one day to say thank you to him. He said to me, if you want to build a career in journalism, stay here. But if you want to make money, he said you can go and take those offers. And those words were golden to me. So I try to share the same with those younger people that I meet. I'm young, so I'm realizing I'm answering the first question last because I have an opinion about that question. I'm pretty much young, and but I try to tell them it's about integrity, it's about impact, it's about the quality of the work. When, for instance, Mr. Tajudi Adigu was leaving the energy desk at the Guardian, and Mr. Yakubu Lawal was being elevated to head the desk, they needed a correspondent to work with him. And they needed to pick one person from the newsroom. And they didn't need to see our faces. They just went back to the archives and were looking at our works. And from the works, they said, no, we're looking at the works in Sylvester that we're going to take. Although when I got there, after the first 2-3 stories, they said, no. This crime reporter is going to create problem here. So, an interesting one for me. Of course, I say that to them. Then we talk about personally issues of legacy. For me, it's about what I want to be known for. What I'm known for is as a journalist who, through investigative journalism, unveiled corruption and abuses in the government. I told you for doing that, I still have at least 3 matters in court that were instituted as far back as 2007-2008. So of course, promoting democracy, because there's no alternative to it. We know that being a student of political science and public administration, we often say that the worst civilian administration is better than the best military administration. So we continue to promote democracy because we know we were here. We saw what it was like when the guys in uniform were in charge with the guns in uniform. So we don't want to go back to those days. So we continue. One of the things I want to be known for is to support democracy, and that is why whenever I see sham elections, I see the electoral umpires and the actors not doing the right thing, not allowing the electoral process to produce the right candidates, I frown at it. Particularly with regards to the recent elections in Ondo, I will spare no ink if I was to write about what happened in that election. Not because I'm particularly close to one of the candidates, but the fact that if you are a true lover of democracy, you will frown at any process that is abused or, as it were, weaponized in a way to produce an outcome that is not a true reflection of the will of the people. But when it's not about the will of the people, it's no longer democracy. It can't be about the will of the few when the people say, oh, we don't want that person. So we're going to weaponize the system, the INEC, the police, the DSS, the army, because we don't like that person. Well, you are not the majority. It's no longer a democracy. So because I would want to be known for someone who supports free press, press freedom. I was a victim. I don't want to continue to be a victim. I want the press to be free to publish what they know to be truth. People always are quick to quote Benton Amin, who said, you are free to say what you want to say, but whether you will be free after you have said it remains to be seen. So, of course, I want to be known for one who promotes transparent governance. Anything that helps educate the public. I like to be informed, and I like to inform the world around me. So those are the things I want to be known for. I also want to be known for raising the next generation of journalists, media practitioners who will be committed also advancing this profession. We know that this profession has come under attacks, economic attacks, political attacks, social attacks, and we are at the verge of losing what we were known and celebrated for because of the economic conditions. Today we want to survive, and because of that, there are things we cannot publish anymore. We publish them, the industry shuts its door at you. I remember then we did a story that was critical of the CBN. And the CBN saw a bank's ad in the edition and called the bank. They called the bank. The corporate affairs guy told me that the corporate affairs guy at the CBN was saying that you are the ones giving money to this guy to continue to embarrass us. So that was the connection. So you can imagine how it runs. So you are attacking federal government, for instance, the agencies of that federal government will black you out. Well, I will black out with you, and you're not going to get patronage. Now, that leaves you with the readers, and then we are in a climb where we must continue to reinvent ourselves to see how we can be popular with the people if we cannot be popular with the media buyers. I think for me, that is the battle we'll continue to engage in. But having said that, I'll say to you, I'm Sylvester Ebhodaghe, publisher, National Daily Newspaper, www.nationaldailynng.com, and this is just a bit